I built the gun shed to keep peace, not start a war. It stood at the far end of my 2-acre property in Fernbrook Hollow, a simple, oak-plank structure with a reinforced lock and nothing flashy, just clean lines and solid purpose. As a retired Army weapons instructor, I still taught the occasional private course, mostly to local law enforcement and veterans looking to stay sharp. It was quiet, legal, and far from the picket fence drama of the HOA that governed the neighboring development. But as it turns out, peace can look like provocation, especially to Darlene Hayworth. Darlene, president of the Oakshade HOA and self-proclaimed guardian of neighborhood aesthetics, first noticed my shed 3 days after it went up. I spotted her squinting from behind her hydrangeas, clutching her phone like it was a badge. She was tall, angular, and always wore some variation of pink. Her expression that morning was less concerned citizen and more hawk circling over a rabbit. I thought nothing of it, until she showed up on my driveway with a clipboard. "Mr. Grady," she said curtly, gesturing toward my backyard, "we've had several complaints." I glanced behind her. 2 HOA board members flanked her like nervous mall cops. One held a measuring tape, the other a camera. "Complaints?" I asked, wiping sawdust from my hands. "Your shed," she said, with the kind of distaste usually reserved for vermin, "is a visual threat. It's visible from 3 Oakshade homes and casts an intimidating silhouette." "It's a shed," I said slowly, "on my land. Fernbrook Hollow shares a boundary with Oakshade. According to our bylaws, any visible structure that disrupts neighborhood harmony is subject to review." "I'm not in your HOA." "You're adjacent," she snapped. "Proximity doesn't exempt you from impact." I folded my arms. "You're on my property, ma'am. That does." Her eyes narrowed. The moment hung, brittle and tight. Then came the whimpering grunt of my guard llamas, Tank and Bessie, trotting around the side of the barn. They weren't aggressive, just big, alert and territorial, especially when strangers approached. Darlene stepped back instinctively. "What are those?" "Llamas," I said. "Rescued them a year ago. They keep the coyotes and unwanted visitors at bay." "They're unnerving," she muttered. "And they smell. They prefer to be called effective deterrents." She pursed her lips like she'd tasted vinegar. "Expect a formal letter. Your structure, your animals, they violate the visual and emotional cohesion of Oakshade." That night, the letter arrived certified. It accused me of erecting a paramilitary storage facility and harboring aggressive ungulates. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my beer. The next morning, a faded SUV idled across the street. Same model, different color, every day that week. I knew surveillance when I saw it. Darlene had started a campaign. I began to notice small things. A drone hovering briefly over my backyard. HOA newsletters delivered to my mailbox despite never signing up. Someone even left a pamphlet titled "How to Integrate Peacefully into a Planned Community" in my fence post. The passive aggression was escalating. Then came the county complaint. An anonymous report accused me of stockpiling firearms and training a private militia. A county inspector showed up, red-faced and apologetic, waving a clipboard and shaking his head. "Don't worry," I told him. "You're not the first clipboard I've seen this week." He cleared me on the spot. Everything was legal, properly registered, and safer than most gun shops in town. Still, the message was clear. This wasn't about safety. It was about control. And Darlene didn't like what she couldn't control. Tank and Bessie began sleeping closer to the fence, more alert than usual. They sensed it before I did, the tension thickening in the air like a storm brewing just over the ridge. The shed had become more than a shed. To me, it was purpose. To Darlene, it was defiance. And in Fernbrook Hollow, that kind of defiance demanded a reckoning. The sheriff didn't call first. Instead, Deputy Riley showed up on a humid Wednesday morning, his cruiser crunching the gravel as Tank and Bessie trotted to intercept him. He rolled his window halfway down and raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, llamas," he said. "I come in peace." I waved them off and walked toward the car, wiping grease from my hands. I'd been tightening a latch on the shed door. "Problem?" I asked. "Got a report. Said you've got some kind of unsecured weapons cache. I sighed. You too. He chuckled, a dry, tired sound. County already cleared you. But when the HOA calls the sheriff directly and uses the word threat, we're obligated to eyeball the situation. Let me guess, Darlene Hayworth. He gave me a look that said, you already know. Riley stepped out and did a casual walkthrough. I opened the shed, let him see the secure gun safes, the training dummies, the laminated safety protocols nailed to the wall. Everything was pristine, military-grade order. He nodded with approval. You run a tighter setup than the academy, he said. I train deputies and veterans here. Darlene's got it twisted. She's also got 3 HOA board members who called within 20 minutes of each other, he said. Coordinated complaints like that tend to raise eyebrows. It's manufactured drama, I muttered. He leaned on the hood. Thing is, they're pushing hard for a public safety audit. Want me to declare your shed a community hazard? I stiffened. You're not serious. They said if I don't, they'll escalate to the county commissioner and the media. I looked at my land, 2 acres of hard-earned peace, and felt the dirt shift beneath my boots. You do what you gotta do. Just know, I'm not rolling over. Riley nodded, tapped the cruiser twice, and drove off. An hour later, I found Darlene on my property line with a measuring wheel and a smug expression. She wore a visor, pearls, and carried a manila folder like it contained nuclear codes. You're 2.4 feet into the visibility zone, she called out. I leaned on the fence. Didn't realize Oakshade had a zone for staring at things they don't own. You're in violation of Section 7A, Visual Threat Structures Abutting Residential View Lines. It's a clear bylaw infraction. I'm not in Oakshade. Your bylaws mean nothing here. She smiled. That's where you're wrong. Oakshade has jurisdictional influence over shared perimeter aesthetics. You built a structure that projects hostility. It's a shed. For safety training. For weapons, she corrected, her voice rising. You may not be bound by our HOA, but you are a visible menace. And the sheriff's office is beginning to agree. Tank grunted behind me. Bessie pawed the earth. Darlene flinched. And those beasts are another issue entirely. I've filed an animal disturbance claim. You're trespassing, I said flatly. Again. Her smile didn't budge. We'll see what the sheriff says after our next meeting. Enjoy your evening, Mr. Grady. She left a pink flyer stuck to my mailbox. It read, Community Safety Forum, discussing emerging neighborhood threats. My name was underlined. Twice. That night, I lit the fire pit out back and sat watching the moonlight fall across the gun shed. Tank and Bessie dozed in the barn doorway, but their ears twitched with every gust of wind. I pulled out my old military journal. Not to write, just to remember. I'd fought wars overseas, trained men to disarm bombs, negotiated ceasefires with tribal leaders under threat of sniper fire. And now, here I was, being outflanked by a woman with a clipboard and a committee. The next morning, Darlene escalated. 3 members of the HOA showed up in neon vests marked Safety Committee. They tried to march into my backyard. Tank and Bessie had other plans. The llamas didn't bite. They didn't spit. They just herded. With uncanny coordination, they blocked the intruders, snorted, and nudged them slowly, irresistibly, back toward the road. It was oddly graceful, like sheepdogs in a ballet. The HOA members panicked, tripped over themselves, and stumbled straight into the path of an approaching sheriff's cruiser. Riley stepped out, blinking. Well, he muttered, that's one way to enforce a perimeter. I crossed my arms. You still thinking about that hazard designation? He looked at the shed, then at the gasping HOA members, now arguing with Bessie. Nope, he said. Looks secure to me. By the time the Community Safety Forum rolled around, I already knew it wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a trial. The flyer promised open dialogue, but the venue, a converted church hall inside Oakshade's community center, was arranged like a courtroom. Darlene stood at the podium under a banner that read, Preserving Harmony, Ensuring Safety. The rows of chairs were filled with Oakshade residents sipping complimentary cucumber water, clutching printed agendas. I didn't dress for war. Just boots, jeans, and a collared shirt. But the hush that fell when I walked in made it clear I was being treated like a defendant. Deputy Riley was already there, arms crossed in the back, leaning against the wall with a neutral expression. Darlene tapped the mic. Thank you for attending this urgent forum. Tonight, we address a growing concern threatening our community's tranquility. She clicked a remote. A grainy aerial photo filled the projector screen. My shed, captured from drone height, surrounded by annotations in red. Weapon storage? Aggressive livestock zone? Unregulated training grounds? I raised my hand. She ignored it. We believe this structure and the activities surrounding it constitute a threat. While technically located outside Oakshade, she looked directly at me. Its visual and psychological impact on our community is undeniable. A man in the front stood up. My daughter saw those llamas and hasn't slept since. Someone else murmured, I heard gunfire last week. Darlene nodded solemnly. Exactly. Noise, danger, and fear. This is what we're being forced to live beside. I stepped forward. You weren't forced. I was here before Oakshade broke ground. Gasps. Riley raised an eyebrow. Darlene froze, just for a second, then recovered. That may be, she said, lips tight, but communities evolve. Standards evolve. And fear isn't a standard. It's a tactic, I replied. Let's be honest. This isn't about safety. It's about control. A few heads turned. The room shifted. I run certified weapons safety training. I follow every law, every permit. My llamas are docile and legal. But none of that matters to you, does it? Because what really scares you, Darlene, is not what I have, but that you can't regulate it. The silence stretched, brittle and electric. Then Darlene clicked her tongue. So, you admit this is intentional defiance? No. I admit that I don't take orders from a neighborhood council I never joined. She stepped down from the podium, heels sharp against the tile. Then we'll escalate. We'll file with the county. We'll appeal to zoning. Do that, I said. But just remember, if you keep pushing, there's always a pushback. The meeting dissolved into murmurs. I walked out before the applause, or the jeers, could start. Riley caught up with me in the parking lot. She's not going to stop, he said. And next time, it won't be a community meeting. It'll be something messy, eh? I know. You planning something? I looked up at the stars. I'm planning to finish my fencing project and reinforce the barn gate. He chuckled. Let me know if you need backup. Over the next few days, things got quieter, but not in a good way. Darlene stopped making appearances. The flyers stopped. The drive-by photos, the HOA scouts, the passive-aggressive gift baskets all vanished. It felt like the eye of a hurricane. Then, late Friday night, my motion sensors lit up. I slipped out the back door with a flashlight and found Tank and Bessie standing alert near the fence. Footprints, fresh, multiple, led from the Oakshade boundary toward the shed. The lock on the door had been tampered with. Scratched. Pry marks. Someone had tried to break in. They were testing me now. I installed a trail cam the next morning, wired up a few alarms, adjusted the floodlights, and posted a laminated sign that read, "Smile for the camera. The llamas bite." Riley came by later, took photos of the tampered lock, and filed a report. No prints. But this wasn't kids, he said. It was deliberate. Message received, I said. Time to send one back. He looked me over. Just don't give them a reason. I smiled. I won't have to. The final straw wasn't the break-in attempt. It was the fence. I woke up that Sunday to find a fresh row of white lattice panels nailed along the property line on my side. 8 feet tall, sparkling new, an HOA vanity wall meant to protect Oakshade's aesthetic integrity, according to the golden plaque bolted into the middle slat. They hadn't even bothered to notify me. Just sent a crew at dawn, and erected it like they were drawing a battle line. Tank and Bessie stood beside it, unimpressed. I stood beside them, furious. They'd invaded my land. Again. I called the sheriff. By the time Riley arrived, I had the boundary flags and GPS coordinates ready. He checked the survey map and let out a low whistle. They cross 2 feet into your land. Know what that makes it? He nodded. Criminal trespass. I took a breath. Then it's time. What's the plan? Simple, I said. I stopped pretending this is just a misunderstanding. That afternoon, I hit the feed store and picked up 5 pounds of llama treats, a few feet of bright orange caution tape, and a gallon of biodegradable red paint. While Riley filed the incident report, I painted a massive "No trespassing" sign right on their gleaming white fence. Then I hung the tape like crime scene markers. And I let Tank and Bessie loose. I don't know what Darlene expected when she saw them trotting into Oakshade, but it wasn't strategic retaliation. The llamas didn't destroy anything. They didn't need to. They wandered peacefully into her open-air garden party, some kind of HOA mixer complete with hors d'oeuvres and a violinist, and proceeded to rearrange every tablecloth, sample every cheese tray, and nuzzle guests like they were long-lost cousins. Bessie leaned into a flower-arched Tank walked through a chocolate fountain. Darlene shrieked like she'd been shot. These animals are attacking us. I walked up the brick path, calm as a lake. They're just saying hello. This is outrageous. Kind of like building a wall on someone else's land, I said. Which, by the way, you'll be removing by sundown. You have no right. I held up a folder. Survey map. Sheriff's report. Filing a civil suit tomorrow. And since your wall obstructs my access to the western slope, that's a second count. Intentional encroachment. You want a legal war, Darlene? I trained with the best. The color drained from her face. Around us, residents were filming. A few even chuckled as Tank laid down in a flower bed like royalty. Then Riley's cruiser pulled in. He stepped out, saw the llamas standing peacefully amid overturned punch bowls, and sighed. Well, he said, looks like your livestock wandered. They're vicious, Darlene cried. They ruined everything. Riley raised an eyebrow. They're registered guard animals. As long as they didn't harm anyone or damage property, I don't see a problem. Do you? Her jaw flapped, but no sound came out. And that wall, Riley continued. You've got until sunset to remove it. Or the county will. Darlene's grip tightened around her champagne flute. You can't. Oh, I can, he said. Mr. Grady here is within every right. And considering the surveillance footage and multiple trespass complaints, I'd suggest you back off. Riley turned to me. Need a ride back? I grinned. We'll walk. So I led Tank and Bessie out of Oakshade like a parade marshal, the guests parting with murmurs of amusement and not a little admiration. By sundown, the fence was gone. 2 days later, Darlene resigned from the HOA board. Word spread fast. Seems people were tired of her vendettas, tired of the drama. The new interim president? A retired Navy medic who shook my hand and said, should have brought those llamas in sooner. The calls stopped. The flyers vanished. And I finally got to finish my fencing project. Tank and Bessie still patrol the yard, but mostly they nap in the sun now, content in their victory. As for me, I didn't ask for a fight, but I didn't shy from it either. Some folks only understand boundaries when they're enforced. And sometimes, the best enforcers have long necks and no patience for nonsense.